Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. At AM 630. WMAL.
8:07 on WMAL, where Washington talk. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman. Brian and Brian in the morning, joined by Jake Tapper from ABC News, senior White House correspondent. Jake, how are you?
Brian, how are you?
We're doing well. Okay, let's go right to this Chinese dissident thing. I didn't read the entire transcript, but I read some of the transcript yesterday with Jay Carney. Asked a lot of questions about this. Seems like he wanted to push it off on the State Department. How do you think they're handling this? And I got to imagine this is a very difficult one for the Obama administration.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have a diplomatic incident with the Chinese, it's dicey and it can be very messy. Obviously, that's the case with Mr. Chen. The suggestion is from the White House that he escaped from his compound, his house, got to the U.S. Embassy, was there, sought asylum there, and that he was okay with the negotiations that the U.S. had done on his behalf to stay in China. That he would go to a port city, he would be able to leave the town he's in and be reunited with his family. And then the suggestion is that when he saw his wife later that day, or when he heard about his wife having been beaten since he sought refuge at the asylum, he changed his mind and thought he wasn't safe anymore. And right now, Secretary Clinton has said that they are making progress to Chen's most recent request, which is that he fly to the U.S. With Secretary Clinton. It is, it's a very uncomfortable and awkward situation, and obviously not what the Chinese and Secretary Clinton wanted to be talking about. And at the end of the day, I think in the midst of negotiations, it's difficult to assess and judge how well they've handled it, because you have to really judge it by the result. But so far, it's been a rather messy process.
Do we know who made the decision to allow him to leave the embassy and go to the hospital? Was that a decision made by the ambassador? Was the Secretary of State involved, and perhaps even the President of the United States?
My impression is that this was made a decision made either by the U.S. ambassador and Kirk Campbell, the Assistant Secretary. I don't think that President Obama was being briefed on this at that level during that process. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's the kind of thing that the president would weigh in on. He would defer to his senior State Department staff.
Are you expecting that to be the narrative of the next couple of days of the White House and Jay Carney pushing it off on the State Department and the State Department spokesman and saying, hey, it's not got nothing to do with us, it has to do with the State Department?
I mean, that's what they did yesterday. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of questions referred to the State Department and a lot of attempts by Jay to explain that Mr. Chen changed his mind, and at this point we're just trying to figure out what to do next. I have to say, I mean, if the situation could be resolved in the next couple hours. We don't know,
right?
And it sure is awkward. I don't know. I'd have to, I guess we'll see, but this doesn't seem to me to be the kind of thing that the public would hold a president accountable for. It is, and I think that there's clearly an attempt by the White House to have this be handled by the State Department.
Well, if you have a situation where Mr. Chen gets on the Secretary's plane and comes back, isn't that going to be perceived by the Chinese as a real slap in the face?
I don't know. I mean, it seems theoretically, yes, I could understand that argument. And, what happened was after the United States had successfully negotiated for Chen to move to a port city in China and be reunited with his family, there were Chinese government reports in the Chinese press blasting America for its inappropriate handling of what is a domestic Chinese situation. And so even after the U.S. thought that this issue had been resolved the first time, the Chinese were at the very least sending a message internally, and whether that was just for domestic political consumption, I don't know. But sending a message internally that they did not approve of what they had just signed off on. So it's a very difficult. I mean, you guys are old enough to remember when the Chinese were holding U.S. Air Force personnel in the first year of the Bush administration.
Right, I do remember that.
And it's diplomacy with China is so delicate and difficult, regardless of the situation, because you can't really insult them. They are powerful, and the United States needs them to make, in terms of sanctions against Iran, in terms of sanctions against North Korea, in terms of their own handling of their own currency. So it gets really difficult. It's like if you're friends with a bully on a playground, and you have a relationship with him because you don't want him to beat up your brother.
Yeah, let me ask you about another topic, and that is the 1-year anniversary of Osama bin Laden's death. Some people have suggested that, especially on the Republican side of the equation, that perhaps the president did a little too much spiking of the football. We've had debates on this show about whether or not it was a fair thing to bring up and sort of campaign on. How's that playing out in your mind?
Well, I think he is campaigning on the fact that there was the successful mission, and by all accounts, what was a difficult decision. And it doesn't seem to me to be. It seems to me like it's just politics, and he is claiming credit for what was a successful operation, and I'm sure any president would do the same thing. And I think where the line is crossed for a lot of people is when the campaign makes the suggestion that Mitt Romney would not have made that same decision. Now there are quotes that Romney made in 2007 that suggest that he and Obama had different positions on this issue when it came, at least rhetorically, to how important was it to go after bin Laden, one man, and whether or not. And remember, I covered this. So when Senator Barack Obama gave a speech in 2007, in which he said that if the United States had intelligence indicating a high-value terrorist target was in Pakistan, and Pakistan was not going to go after that individual, the United States would. He said that it was a big story. He was criticized from all quarters, including Mitt Romney, including Secretary Clinton, including Vice President Biden. Of course, they were both senators at the time. And ultimately, that's exactly what he did. And I've said to the White House, well, you're bringing out this Romney quote, suggesting that he thought Obama saying that and suggesting he would do that was not wise. But Secretary Clinton and Vice President Biden, said the same thing, and they said, and you're perfectly allowed to bring that up.
Right.
They know that what Obama said at the time was criticized even by members of his own cabinet now. They don't care. They are like, it was the right call. This is their view. It was the right call to make in 2007, and he followed through with it, and he won the argument and he won the day, and so everybody else was wrong.
All right, you're hosting this week?
Yeah, we'll be talking about all this stuff with David Axelrod, exclusive interview with him, senior strategist of the Obama campaign, Senator John McCain, who I'm sure will have a lot to say about this OBL politics, and then on our roundtable, George Will, Tavis Smiley, Dave Buchanan, and Austin Goolsby. So it should be a lively show.
All right, Jake, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.